Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining our webinar today. I hope everybody is enjoying this beautiful day. My name is Erica Throckmorton from Advanced Partners. We're so happy to be the sponsor for today's webinar all about AI. Advanced is the #1 provider of payroll funding to the staffing industry. We specialize in providing working capital, strategic solutions, and back office support to staffing firms nationwide. We have a very exciting webinar, very informative. Before I get to that and introduce our speaker, I wanted to just go over a few housekeeping items for the webinar platform you guys are using. First off, this webinar is being recorded. If you have a question for our speaker, please use the Q&A widget in your console. It's on the left-hand side of your screen. We will do our best to get to every question, but if we run out of time, the speaker will connect with you guys in a post-event email. All right, so let's introduce our speaker. So Jeff Staats is here with us today. He's a growth advisor and fractional marketing leader with 26 years of experience helping B2B companies build a strategy, systems, and leadership alignment that turn marketing activity into predictable revenue. He works primarily with staffing and recruiting firms doing between 15 and $75 million in revenue, and is the founder of Marketing QB and creator of the Signal Assessment, which is a diagnostic tool that helps staffing firm CEOs identify exactly where the growth is stalling and what fits next. Jeff has served as an adjunct professor for 15 years, bringing real-world marketing and business strategy into the classroom. Jeff, thanks for being with us, and go ahead and take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, hold on for a sec. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you guys can hear me. If you can't, that's probably good. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, so I think before I get started, I'm sure those that have been around the staffing industry, I've been in staffing for almost 10 years. I've worked on the vendor side and the SaaS side. I've worked in a staffing firm for 4 years. I've been CMO of a marketing agency serving staffing. I've worked on the agency side, and all while doing that, really focused a lot on growing staffing firms, almost being a fractional marketing leader, fractional growth advisor, and just been lucky enough to work with great owners and great companies and really at least impart some wisdom. As Erica said, I've been around a while, so able to impart some wisdom on, what exactly I can do, the ideas I can give around marketing and everything else. And also came on board in staffing, at least, right when automation came in. So this whole AI evolution is actually funny because it's the same craziness that automation had back in 2016, 2017 into 2018. So it's funny to see it because I'm sure those that have been on any sort of webinar, conference, have been to all of them. I've spoken at a lot of them. There was a time where literally everything was automation. That was all you did was talk about, automating your recruiting, automating this, automating that. Can you do this with automation? How would you do this? The top 5 things. So now you're seeing it with AI as well. And AI's made such a huge, thunderous entrance. And there's so much out there that, you're seeing the exact same thing. So how do you use AI to be better recruiters? How do you use AI to do this? So the whole purpose of this is, and I am not an AI consultant. I am not the AI guru prompt engineer, but I'm lucky enough to understand how staffing firms work and what the processes are, focusing a lot on sales and marketing. So what I wanted to do is honestly curate and talk through some practical ways that staffing firms are using AI to grow. And, again, some of these things may be 101. Some of these things may be oh my God, I didn't even you could do that. So it's really just collecting a lot of those ideas, things that I've built or things that I've seen staffing firms build, to not just, okay, we're going to throw Claude in and we're going to fire 6 people, or hey, my goal is to run completely on AI agents and not humans. I am not an advocate for that. I don't think that's the right way to go. I get it, when it comes to dollars and cents, But this whole point is really to say, okay, how do you make your team stronger? How do you grow faster? How do you scale? And what does it look like if I were to be a leadership role in staffing? What would I look through, and what would I actually put in place? Because to be honest, 80% of I think everybody's building agents. So 80% of these things will never do anything. They'll either not work. They'll either hey, it worked, but it totally was wrong. So there is a lot of iterating with how you're doing this stuff. And so that's really what I want to get to is if you are running a bunch of agents, or your team is running a bunch of agents, and nobody really knows what's working, what's not, whatever, this is for you. If you're kind of dipping your toe, this is for you. If you really want to just throw some ideas off to your team, this is for you as well. So again, my goal in all of this is it's not replacing your team. I get it. I understand it. I know there's a lot out there. Once AI came in, Microsoft, laid off 10,000 people. Oracle laid off this many people. Facebook laid off this many people. Now they're hiring them all back because they're like, oh crap, humans actually need to run some of the strategy and some of the other stuff. So it is kind of funny now that they're kind of hiring them back and saying, well, we probably need somebody to conduct or quarterback some of these things that we're doing. So this is a message about empowerment and how do you make your people smarter? How do you make your people do more? How do you make your people focus a lot on the relationships? So on the sales side, how are they creating better relationships with the hiring managers, with the leaders of those companies? On the recruiting side, how are they creating better relationships with candidates? There's just such a great opportunity. And for me, this is my marketing team. I work with staffing firms. I'm a one-person shop, and and I like it. I like being a growth advisor to staffing firms. I like really getting my hands dirty. But then there's also this, how do I market? How do I sell? How do I create good relationships? What do I need to do to, enhance my brand awareness and personal branding? So that's where the voids of what I do in terms of being a business owner, how I can turn to AI to do that. So that's, again, I'm not firing people or doing anything else. It's really just a way to say, okay, well, how do I, fill some gaps with that? So this is a mind shift game, in terms of how do I think about AI? I mean, a lot of this is, and this is kind of what you're seeing in some things. There's a lot of doom and gloom, podcasts and webinars and all that. And, but I think there is this empowerment message, and I see it with staffing firm owners. I see it with salespeople. I see it with recruiters. Again, it's kind of like when automation came out and you started thinking about ways that it could help your role. The old way is that AI is going to replace my team. It's an IT problem. We need a ton of money to be able to get this done. Or the turn it away and it's optional. It's not going to actually happen. It's a bubble. It'll burst. That's the old way. It's here. And honestly, for a $20 Claude subscription, you can do a lot. If you're at ChatGPT, I think it's called Codex. You can do that as well. But yeah, the new way to think about it, and that's really the whole premise of this webinar is, this is doing more that we're already great at. It is, everybody can use AI in what they're doing. And, you're not trying to boil the ocean. You're not trying to have I know somebody, I talked to them last week where they were like, yeah, I've got 6 agents running right now, in my business and what I'm trying to do. And I'm like, great. Are they working? And they're like, I have no clue. I mean, they're doing some things, but I don't know. And so just because you think of something doesn't mean you have to throw an agent out or you have to do this or whatever. I mean, and you'll see it later in the presentation, is the starting small is a huge thing, and that's where I think it differs a little bit from automation, to be honest. Automation, you could name a gap, put an automation in place, fill that gap, whether it's an engagement gap or a process gap. That's a lot of what I did when I first started, is we're plugging gaps fast. I think with AI, it's more of a methodical approach. I think it's one of those and again, we'll think of I'll have some thought starter questions there, but it's really, What's the one thing that you want to solve? And then just hyper focus on that one thing, because there is iterating that needs to happen. There is, we got to update the prompt. We got to look at the feedback. We got to understand it. If you really start that way, and that's been the mantra of AI for the last 2 years since it's really been, crazy out there, is if you start small and really like perfect that one little agent or one little process that you want to get done, then you expand it from there. You'll understand and you'll perfect the way you think and the way that you prompt and you command. And I think that if you can just spend a little bit of time up front, it's like when you bring on a marketing agency and they want to do the audit, and they want to do the positioning, and they want to do the brand. And I realize like, I don't want to spend 6 to 8 weeks doing all this stuff. And I'm not saying 6 to 8 weeks on AI. I'm saying, but that process, if you just spend a little bit of time perfecting that process, oh man, like then you will understand how you build an agent, not necessarily how the agent reacts. Then you can just really rinse and repeat and start knocking those things out. So start small, prove that it works, fix where you think it's not going to work, or fix your prompt, and then really get moving on some things. And even in the last 6 months, you've seen so many opportunities and so many more things like Claude Code and Claude. Then there's the Codex, and there's all these generative AI agents, and there's a lot more opportunities and a lot more. The barrier to entry is a lot lower to get in, so you can get a lot of things done. Excuse me, within guardrails, of course. So, and then, the firms who start now build the advantage. And I think that is true. I think if you can just start now, and I see it a lot. I mean, again, this whole presentation is about either what I've been building for firms because it's there, it's available, and there's a need, or what I've seen firms build and what I've seen, which some cool things that people are thinking about. And they're stuck in, on the weekend, really just blasting out some, I hate to say vibe coding, but blasting out some things that are like actually working because they saw a need, they iterated, they understand the pitfalls, they fixed some of those things, and then they put something out that was working. So really cool thing. In terms of, as we get into these things, you may know some of these terms. These are at least the ones that I think are the most important. Again, generative AI, that's really what creates the content. That's what a lot of things that you see in terms of images and audio and video. And you've got the AI videos and the funny mocking videos and the memes, and you're creating blogs and all these other things. Then there's LLM, large language model. That's the whole engine behind this. So whether you're using a Copilot, whether you're using a ChatGPT, whether you're using Claude, whether you're using anything else, they are using some sort of large language model. So again, just know that. Excuse me. Then there's a prompt. Prompt is the instructions. There's many best practices around how to do a good prompt. That is really what makes or breaks either what your answer is or what the agent's going to be or what you're going to get back in return. If anything, that's where you spend your time, is perfecting that. That's why, you guys are in the staffing and recruiting industry. That's why AI prompt engineers are commanding 300,000 plus in terms of salary, because so many people do it wrong and don't have the best practices and don't understand the processes, that they've created a job because of it. So it is interesting. Knowing how to prompt is key. AI agent, that's basically what is the product of what you put together. So you want that agent to, update something, write something, change something. I even have, I've seen agents, and I've had it where it orders on Amazon on your behalf. There's some really cool things in terms of like what you can do and how you can set that up, and it kind of works on your behalf. And that's where you're seeing, that's the product of all of this, is what are these agents and what are they doing? Automation, again, is just the software, the platform that is doing some of those repetitive tasks. You see a lot of times AI and automation working together. Hallucination. So that was big back when ChatGPT first came out. that's where they give you the wrong answer, where AI either gives you the wrong answer, agrees with what you're saying. There's always, you'll see that disclaimer in any of the different platforms. There's always something where it says, well, it could give you the wrong answer. Make sure you verify that. And you see a lot of people that, obviously test it out and say, oh, when was the War of 1812? And it'll say 1930. And you're like, haha, I got you. And so, just making sure that those results of whatever prompt you're putting in make sense. RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So that's actually, how AI can pull answers. So it kind of uses your own data, your own database, your own, if you've created some sort of company database, internal database, it will use that a lot of times to pull some of the answers. Instead of kind of going external, it can use some of the internal information to be able to do that. And you'll see that a lot when you're building your own customer success bot or agent. You are creating some sort of, if there's a agent that helps with training, a lot of times it'll do that where it's an intuitive type of agent in there. So, and I'm sure there's obviously companies that will build these agents for you, and it's pretty cool. But these are the terms that I think are the most important. Especially for somebody who's new or somebody who's really dipping their toes in or still kind of a novice at this. Obviously, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on here. This is the platform landscape. The only thing I'll make fun of, because those that know me know that I'm very sarcastic, is everything is called Copilot. So it doesn't matter, just call it Copilot, and then it'll assume it has AI in it. But if you look, there's so many Copilots, Copilot. But there are a lot of them. These are the top AI tools that are being used right now. And what's interesting, and I believe it's still there, is that, and we'll talk about this in the marketing section of this, is, LLM or using any of the AI platforms is the number 3 search method in terms of, how people are searching. So Google still number 1, but by a thin margin. I believe YouTube then is number 2. And then you're looking at LLM as number 3. Very soon, you will see the majority of searches coming out of ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, any of those LLMs. So pretty soon that will be the number 1, which again leads into why companies need to focus a lot on how to get cited in AI searches. That's a big thing from a marketing perspective, because you're not seeing, you're seeing your search traffic to your website going down. Most people, they are. And it's because you're getting those answers ahead of time. You plug something in, you plug a question in to wherever you're plugging that in, and it's giving you the answer right there. So that is one thing to think about. So then they're getting the answer without having to click through to whatever the page is. Excuse me. Or they can pick and choose where they want to go. That's the other thing. So being cited and being ahead of the game in that's kind of, if I were to do it on the marketing side and focus with a company on that, that's where I would be, making sure that my schema markup is there, that I'm best practice on my website, because that's where you're going to capture, a lot of those searches, or get cited in there to at least be in the game with people as they're searching. So, but you can read all of this on your own. And, if I'm looking at this, the tool categories that I think every staffing firm should cover, I think number 1, you should have an AI assistant. So you got to have something. And I think that's a lot of times that's where it could end as well. But I think having a AI assistant that's with you at all times, ChatGPT, Claude, I would have a meeting note taker. So if you don't have one, I'd get one. I know some of these like Zoom, I think Google Meet, they all have something built in. I personally use Fireflies. That's just me. But a lot of them already have something built in. But the meeting note taker is huge for so many reasons. You talk about practical. You could do a ton of things with, sending out a thank you email for a meeting, along with a recap of what you heard, along with an action item list. You could then plug that into your project management system. You could create tasks out of it. There's so many things with a note taker, but I would definitely, if you're not actively using one, I would actively use it. Content creation, huge. Whether you're using the exact same platform as your assistant for it, great. If not, you can use something else. But I think in terms of ideas, in terms of actual content, in terms of looking at job descriptions, updating job descriptions based on best practice, analyzing content, and then creating it, a best practice. Any of that, you should be using that. There's an automation layer to that. So again, you can use an automation platform. You can use process automation like a Zapier or a Make to make sure two disparate databases work together and talk together if you wanted to move data in and out. And then there's a research and intelligence. Perplexity is the best at that, but I know you could still use Claude, you could still use ChatGPT, you could still use a lot of things, but that's really research and intelligence. You having something like that is really great because, and I was speaking to somebody about this earlier, is that, you've got two camps of what AI can do. You've got the execution camp and you've got the strategy camp. And so, and you've got people that think it could do both. And so people think of, there's this execution side of AI. That's all I think about, so a lot of these things could cover that. Then there's AI can think, AI knows all this stuff. It can, scramble all of this information together and then spit out some sort of analysis, summary, next steps, recommendations, make me look smarter. There's that side of it too. So, making sure that you cover those areas and you cover where either you don't have time or you may not have the capacity to do something. Like that's when you talk about starting small, that's where I would start small. If you like creating content, have AI help you with the strategy. If you hate creating content, have it do that. And then you're the strategy person. And when you talk about, for a lot of you that have an ATS, you're seeing it. I mean, I could name all the ATSs. They all have it. They all are called Copilot. Don't get mad at me if you're an ATS. But your AI is already in your ATS. You're seeing it from all the different ATSs that are out there. There is already AI in there. There's candidate matching. There's job description drafting or analysis. There's, you can do, automated follow-ups. They can generate summaries and resumes and cover letters, and it can do, it can basically do next, what would be the best job. It can do all sorts of stuff. So if you think AI is not in your ATS, it is. It definitely is. But, it depends on, a lot of them do firewall it by or paywall it by, whatever your subscription level is and everything else. But it's there. And so there are opportunities. So if you don't think it's there, it is there in some capacity, which is cool because, again, there's even ways where, and I've seen it in some of the ATSs where it, depending on who you're writing to, and that's based off of generation, you could write your message to a Gen X person is going to be different than a Gen Z. And so even to those nuances of how you communicate with candidates could be different based off of, hey, I'm going to write this person's 22 years old, make this resonate to a 22-year-old person versus make this resonate to a 52-year-old person. And there are nuances. I do a lot of it with generational marketing. And what I do is depending on, who they are and who you're targeting. So it can even do things like that help you get a better response rate based off of, who you're writing to. And if you know their birth date and you know that they're going to be a millennial versus a Gen Z, any of that stuff. So it's there. That's the biggest thing. So on the build philosophy, and this is, so the rest of the presentation, I'm going to give you at least thoughts, and we're going to break a lot of this down by functions. It's easier to think functions. Normally I'm a holistic guy and every department works together. But when you think about AI, it really is easier to think about and start with functions versus anything else. So what I'm going to do is kind of look at four main functions of a staffing firm, look at practical ways that I would build AI or where AI could fit in, AI could help out, and then give one example of something built out that could really help you out. And maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't, but the idea here is that they're all thought starters. And there's something there, again, that you could practically create that at least my guess would be either you're not doing it, maybe you're doing it, but you're not too sure if it's working, or you're thinking, how do I scale? How do I grow? Like, what can I do to help my team out? At the very least, this slide is important. Start easy, stay small, keep iterating. Like, again, the rules that I always have, because I tend to go grandiose, I'm going to try to build 10 different things at one time. AI will keep you honest, and AI will definitely keep you grounded in that fact. Is like, you try to do too many things, you try to have 8 different sub prompts in one prompt, you try to answer all these questions or build all this stuff, it will basically self-destruct like Johnny number 5 in Short Circuit. Like, I just dated myself on that one, but that's basically like what's going to happen. So you don't need a tech team. If you're a leader and you want to try something out, you can. If you're a recruiter, some sort of functional, you don't really need a big budget. You need something that's bugging you. You need one problem that's bugging you that you want to be able to solve. And the beauty of it is, there's really not much there. We'll talk about security, because I do think that that's a worthwhile one to talk about. But really, there's not much in terms of stopping you to build it. It's just really, do you have the problem? Do you have something, that you need to solve? And so how do we build it? All right. So the first section that I'm going to talk about is sales and business development. So, again, the biggest thing with sales and business development, at least in my eyes, and working with a ton of sales teams and staffing, working with staffing companies all over, is having the right information. I think there's still a spray and pray method there. I think there's, still process. That seems to be the big thing. And I know it ebbs and flows between candidate problems and then sales problems, and then, it's candidate problems. So we need more candidates. We need more job orders. We need more candidates. We need more job orders. Like, it ebbs and flows beyond that. But I think with sales, I think there's a new age of sales. And this isn't rocket science. I mean, COVID has told us all that people don't have to work in the office. So I do think that has cut a lot of normal sales processes into more fragmented types of things. And so you're seeing, instead of just hey, I always go drop something off at their place, I stop by every week, I stop by every 2 weeks, I've got this, I've got that, I've got that. I think, that whole method has blown up. And I also think, again, there's more competition. There's between companies taking their hiring in-house, between AI, between other staffing firms, there's more competition. So the staffing firm that really has all of this information at their fingertips, I think, is going to be obviously smarter. It will be able to scale, and will also be able to pivot faster. So the real problems of this are, the hours lost in research and prospects. Like, again, you're given a cold prospect list. All right, go figure it out. Like, this is your cold email outreach. And I've seen it before. We're going to go grab Zoom info. We're going to go do all this. And you don't know anything about it. So the problem is, you kind of think you know, but you don't really know. And then a lot of times, staffing firms will look at companies who are actively hiring. So you'll see it on Indeed. You'll see it on maybe LinkedIn, being able to see all that. But again, you've got to do the manual research. Then there's, any sort of follow-up slips. And I see that a ton. I mean, when I talk to sales and marketing teams, like my mantra is cover the funnel. And so I think, again, marketing and sales should work together on campaigns that cover from new lead, all the way to dormant and everything in between. You should have a marketing campaign. You should have a sales process, all of that. The biggest thing here is when things get busy, what are you able to follow up? This is a perfect opportunity for automation. And then, business development calls happen, but either the notes aren't there, you don't know what's going on, you don't really ask the right questions, maybe it's a new person. So, you've got issues around that. And then there's just competitive activity. Like, oh, I didn't know that staffing firm is in my area now. And that's an important thing. Like, what is happening right now? What do you know? What do you not know? And so when you match this up against what AI can do, AI can help you with prospect research. AI can help you with live monitoring of job orders. AI can help you with follow-up sequences along with triggers. AI can help you with pre-call briefs, taking old conversations or taking old meeting notes or taking, even old job orders and be able to kind of educate you and get you up to speed very quickly. That takes away that tribal knowledge of like this salesperson would do things their way and now I don't even know anything about it. And then the competitive intelligence, that's the biggest thing. I think now those that hold that data, again, it's gold. And so when I look at this, I think of like, well, why couldn't you create a competitive sales intelligence dashboard? And honestly, I've seen it. Like I've seen staffing firms do this where you could basically pull all the job order data from your area, from public sources. So whether you have branches, whether you have verticals, whether you basically pull all that job information, it gives you, so it could be a company, it could be a competitor. All the open jobs are out there. If you wanted to call on those jobs and say, hey, it looks like you're hiring, I got a great person, whatever you want to say. But it enriches all that. So you can work with an Apollo, you can work with Seamless or whatever. It gives you the company size, the decision makers, the contact information. It will flag when they have, maybe when they just add a new job opening, whether they have multiple roles, whether they may or may not have a staffing partner. You never know. I mean, there's a lot of information here that you can move in, and this needs multiple platforms, but it creates a dashboard. And you can use a hosting platform like NetLiffy or some of the other ones, or there's the other one, Vercel, where you could basically create a dashboard that has by branch or in total or by vertical or by however you divide out your sales team, that has all the open positions. It has every company that has it. It's updating it in real time. And the idea is you can then put together, your hit list in terms of how you want to attack those open positions. That is a great way because it gives you context, it gives you information, it monitors what competitors are doing, and it gives you power, and it gives you that segmentation instead of just, all right, you got to make 30 calls, go do it. Or you got to make 100 calls, go figure it out. Like it gives you direction. So that's what I've seen it built. I think it's fantastic. Very cool. All right, on the marketing front. So the biggest thing here is, I think there's multiple things with marketing. I know marketing is still in its infancy in staffing firms, maybe outsourcing, maybe just using an internal person, maybe using, an agency, a consultant, whatever. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Job ads take too long, or maybe they're not best practice. I think that there's, consistency is key. I'm a big rising tide lifts all boats person in terms of, getting content out, emails, blogs, all that stuff. Every agency will tell you your website's outdated. So I'll just tell you your website's outdated. Everybody's doing their research beforehand before they come to you. That's true and not true. It's facetious. But there is that part, like, is your website reflecting who you are and your ICP and everything else? There's no bandwidth to manage LinkedIn, email, SEO. And we have no idea if my staffing firm shows up in citations. And I think from a marketing perspective, the order of most important engagements are leads, then citations, then search rankings. That's the way I would build it. Like, I want leads first, but now I need to get cited in AI. Then, like, at least I can at least be in search rankings. But everybody will tell you this, you know, consumers or companies are doing research. You know, what is it? 80% of the research is being done before they even engage with you. So what AI does to make this possible is, you know, again, it can help you with job ads. It can help you with content. It can help you with website content. And then can you have a content engine running with somebody strategic that can do it? That's what I would do. And, you know, I'm actually building this. I know there's others, agents out there that can have it done, but this is one where I think is a no-brainer. And right now it could be expensive. You don't know who to work with, or it's just time consuming from an internal standpoint. And this is one where you could audit your website. You look for technical gaps, you look for content gaps, you look for missed opportunities in terms of performance. You look for things like schema markup is not there for AI. You look at all these different issues that are precluding you from showing up in AI search. It'll generate the pages, the posts, the FAQs, all the best practices to get to AI search, and then also regular search. It will monitor how your firm appears, and then it creates the content around it. So I think that's the magic, because right now, knowing what blog posts to write, knowing what, you know, retention guides or checklists or anything else to create to try to get that inbound lead, you know, that's all time consuming. And also nobody knows where to start. So if you can create, you know, if this engine could look at everything, look at keyword analysis, look at some of the things that are already out there, rank everything, match it up with a marketing strategy to a content strategy to content pillars to blogs. Now you've got that consistent content running, and the focus is on leads, citations, search. And so I think that would be a huge one. If I were doing it, I would do that one from a marketing perspective, because I think that really supports the sales side, that supports the recruiting side, that supports everything else. So that would be my recommendation. Then we get to recruiting. So again, I know just like with automation, recruiting is always a high point here. I think with AI, the biggest thing is the admin side of it. So, you know, with recruiters, you've got to do the screening, you've got to look at the resume, the cover letter, anything else that you have. You're seeing a ton of these AI agents and bots that are already out there. I do think that those are important. I know some are kind of shy away from AI agents. They don't want to use them. I would couple the AI with automation. So you'll see candidate communication drop-offs. I think that's a great opportunity for both AI and automation to work together to make sure that candidates are nurtured consistently, you know, especially from a segmented standpoint. But the biggest thing here is, I think, the power of AI can really help with fitting that right person to the right job. And I think that's part AI. And I know that's the job matching, that's the, you know, semantic job match or whatever we want to call it. But it's also the human, kind of that gut check. And like, hey, I've got, you know, 200 people applied. Let's use AI to screen all those. Let's get to 10. That's when I go into the human side of this. So use AI to screen, to rank, which I know there's platforms out there that do it. You know, push all those call notes in, look at semantics around the call notes, you know, help with outreach, look at interview scheduling and be able to maybe do that and use AI to either conduct the interview or at least the pre-screen. And then the biggest thing that I would do is the pre-call briefs, is having the recruiter, because again, the recruiters are going from call to call to call to call to call. And I think making sure that, you know, that you use AI to get all the information and really, you know, I liken this type of thing to like a dental hygienist and the dentist. Like, let AI be your dental hygienist. Gather all the information, gather everything, get it all done. And then, okay, it's pushed over to the dentist. The dentist has a 30-second overview of what's going on and can prescribe, okay, we're going to do this based on that. and they don't have to do the work. That's where I would go with an AI recruiter intelligence level. And like I said, I know there's a lot there. It's really putting it all together. So some ATSs have a good portion of this. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. You could take bits and pieces of how an AI agent would work, but you could, whether you're having that call, you could definitely pull all the information. It creates the call brief, then it records and transcribes. Then after the call, it writes the summary. It gives them a score or whatever. It pushes to the ATS and it gets flagged. And then say something doesn't happen, maybe that they are hired on, but they haven't been submitted to a client yet. What does that look like? And I think, again, some ATSs have a portion of this. Some ATSs may have all of it. I do think that there is a barrier to entry from a paywall perspective for some, which is why you could create this using your Claude or using your Chat GPT, because some of these you have to go up to the next level, which could be, another $1,000 per recruiter per license per month, to have that. So what can you do to create something that is just there and you're able to kind of get all that done? So that's where I would say, if you have it, awesome. If you have part of it, great. If you don't, or if there's something precluding you, I still think that this is important, because it's all about time to fill. It's all about the right fit, right time. And it's all about that marketing message of, we stay with our candidates. We are always engaging with our candidates. No more than, put the X day, no more than 90 days goes by without us reaching out to them. That's a great message, because nobody knows the staffing firm name. They just want to get hired. But if you're saying, hey, we create a great experience and we can show it, like, that's a great sales message that you can use, especially when companies need talent and they want to go after talent. So that's what I would do to put that together. The final one is finance. And I think what's interesting about this is I have discussions, and I'm in L10s a lot with staffing firms, where they talk about money. They talk about P&L. They talk about cash flow. And so I do think that there's an opportunity to use AI for a lot of this. And, some have budgets, some don't have budgets. Some, do cash basis, some do accrual basis, some, and there's all these different things. And, a lot of times, hey, we had a bad month. We're going to have to, stop this, and this. Hey, we had a good month. Let's go hire this, and this. And a lot of times, and I compare that to a marketing agency. You get a client, you hire 6 people. You lose a client, you lay off 4 people. You don't want to act that way if you don't have to, because, there's all these costs associated. But, financial visibility tends to be behind. Cash flow surprises happen, especially if you're an owner that maybe has other businesses, or if you're an owner that just doesn't do the day-to-day. You're more out into the sales, you're more into the high level. It's hard to see that. Client profitability is hard to see. So are we making money with all of our clients? Are we not? Can we rank them? What happens with accounts receivable? Hey, it keeps creeping up. Like, they haven't paid us yet. We got to stop everything until they pay us. Well, that's not a good experience. And then vendor costs. Excuse me, vendor costs. Hey, I'm paying for this and then that. Like, I see it a lot in tech stack. I've got this, 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 I've got this. And you're like, great. Are you using all of them? Not at all. Using one. And so how can that help you monitor that? So where AI can make it possible is you can create a co-pilot that helps you with asking these questions, alerts. Now, I do know that you could probably program like a QuickBooks or something else like that, but I think this even goes above and beyond into data visualization and reporting, where you can get a client profitability. You can do a cash flow forecasting. You can do an AR automation. And that's where, and this is an actual product that is out there right now that connects to your QuickBooks and your bank account. It basically, you can ask it whatever question you want, and it gives you the answer. It's intuitive. It's innovative. It gives you signals on what happens with AR. It gives you scenarios that you could ask, and it would give you that. What happens if I hired this? at that amount. And I am by no means a finance advisor or anything like that. I just know as a small business operator, that's one thing that you want to make sure that you can do. And honestly, you don't have to pay the bookkeeper. You don't have to pay a fractional CFO. You don't have to pay, like, this could be where AI is built in to your QuickBooks level, and really just helping you figure all that out. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there, especially when you're looking to invest in different pieces of that. And you're ready to, hey, do I bring this vendor on? Do I, add this retainer? Do I bring this tech piece on? So there's a lot of that that I think you could use AI. And this product does exist. And so I think there's, that's in action right now. So the one thing that I know is, and it's hard because sometimes people just don't think about it, is the security side. So at least what I've read, what I've worked at, what I've been advised about, obviously be smart with this. Don't put anything into these platforms like ChatGPT or Claude that you wouldn't put on a whiteboard. So like they call it PII. So having all that personal information like social security numbers, your financials, their financials, bank account, birth dates, none of that. And you're seeing that's why some, when they're kind of, working with AI, they create their own, sort of local server machine that kind of has it there, not exposed to the rest of the platforms or the other LLMs, because they will take that information. So even on a free, if you have something free, they will take that. So you got to make sure that, security is top of mind, that you definitely have some sort of regulation around PII, making sure that you don't expose socials or anything like that when you're building this. And those smart people that are either using AI agencies or, or just you're smart about it, you're watching YouTube videos, like you're able to do that. That it's important, and that's your thing. Enterprise tools are definitely not the same. So if you are going to create this, I would at least pay the $20 thing or something like that, something that where it really is going to drive that, because there will be some built-in security, and it will allow you to integrate and work with, whether it's code or codecs or whatever, and then ask every vendor, does my data train your model? So I think that is important. Like that's kind of that RAG, where you want to make sure as you're building this that your agent is getting trained. Your agent is, like, any new information is going back into the memory banks and kind of like understanding what's going on. And I just had a discussion about this, like, have an AI use policy. I think that's the biggest thing right now. I think, as an adjunct professor, I've been teaching for like 15 years. The last probably 3 years have been AI, craziness, and it's Wild West. How do I use AI? When do I use AI? What should I use AI for? Like, I would definitely have a company AI use policy. I would definitely have, if you're allowing people to dabble in Claude, or you're allowing people to dabble in like their own roles, I do think having some sort of, AI, I'm sure there's law firms and legal advisors that can help with that. But, what's the right way to do this? What's the right way to build? I have seen cases where I'm like, there's definitely no way, dude. You're not building that the right way at all. And and I've seen good cases where, hey, we've got policy, we've got guardrails, we definitely protect our data. It's encrypted. It's this, it's this, it's this. And so, you're doing it the right way, but definitely have policies and security around what you're building, because it will just help you. Just like when you are thinking about what you're going to do, it will just help you in the outset to make sure that this is running properly. If I'm doing the roadmap, this is where I would start. I'd start with the foundations, and so again, making sure you have your foundations, your policies, your tech platforms. I would then go to build. So pick a function, pick something that's pissing you off, something where you've got a buy-in around it, and then go with one there. Then you scale. And then it's like, great, we know exactly, we've almost scripted how we're going to build an agent, how we're going to build the process, how we're going to secure it, how we're going to have policies against it. Now we can take that process and apply it to the next thing we want to build. So foundation, build, scale, that's the way I would think about it. And that's the way I would actually have all of my different agents in some sort of, in one of those buckets at all times, because that's what you want to make sure that you're doing. So those that don't know where to start, this is where these are the questions I would ask. What's the one thing your team complains about the most? Again, it's like automation. There's always issues there. Where do things fall through the cracks? Again, like an automation. I like this one. In what ways are you unprepared from day to day? That, I think, is the gold answer. Because there are salespeople could be unprepared, recruiters could be unprepared, CEOs could be unprepared, marketing people could be unprepared. That would be the number one question. Where do you feel unprepared? Or in what ways are you unprepared? Man, I went to this meeting and I didn't have that report, or I didn't have this, or man, I wish I would have had this. I wish I would have had some sort of summary. Well, ding, 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 that's AI. You can create an agent to help you be prepared in those meetings or in those things. Or I think that's a gold answer. And then which competitor do you watch most closely? And then if you had a team member who never slept, never forgot anything, or could draft anything in seconds, what would you have them do first? So again, it's the 24/7. If you watch Top Gun Maverick, that's why Ed Harris didn't want Maverick to fly anymore, because they take breaks. And so you want the drone pilots. So think of it like that. So if you had a 24/7 worker, what would they do? What would you have them get done first? How would how would they go and be ongoing? And we'll leave some time for questions. I think I wanted, it was an abrupt ending, but it was a good one. And I think it had a good picture right there. But if there's any questions, I'll take them now. And thank you guys. I appreciate it. Hopefully this was informative.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, that was great. A few questions. All right. If a firm can only pick one build from today's presentation to start with, which one has the fastest payoff?
I would think the one that would have the fastest payoff would be the sales intelligence one. I would think that understanding who has, I think you could do it pretty quickly, pretty easily. I think there's a lot of opportunity to be more informed in your sales efforts. I think a lot of times you're just kind of, I'm just calling on companies. I think if you could have a little bit more intelligence around it, I would start there. And then at least you can have better conversations, and it's like a warm call versus a cold call.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me just go through these. Okay. So ideally, if you prefer a business decide to start this process today, what does the first week or few days typically look like for them?
So I think I think if you were to start something now, I would think there's a lot of prep. And I think I mentioned that before. I would almost workflow out, what do you want to solve? So I think it's a whiteboarding session of, okay, I'm going to again, answering some of those questions. What do you feel unprepared about? Where are some gaps? Pick one of those, write it out. And then I think it's really a matter of, testing the prompt. So you're starting to build the prompt. You're starting, what is my end game that I want to get out of this? Because I think that's the other part, is people don't know what their end game is. I know I want an agent, but what do I want the agent to do? I feel like if you could script this out and say, okay, this is my problem. I don't know what the middle looks like, but this is where I want to be. And how do I get from A to B? Honestly, I say this a lot, ask Claude, ask ChatGPT that question. And it could be hey, help me create an agent that solves this problem. And then the output is this. And it'll tell you step by step exactly what to do. And so I think I would spend the first week getting that right. And then you could start building and testing and putting that together. But I would even pick one example within that agent. Like, okay, I want to like, let me pick one client that I want to try to solve this on or whatever. And just kind of refine it from there.
Okay, wonderful. What's the biggest mistake you've seen staffing firms make when trying to implement AI?
I think I've seen two. So I've seen putting candidate data out there, and unfortunately I've seen that. So I've seen the whole PII, like, well, yeah, I was, I went through this candidate list and I had, Claude like review it and give me some thoughts around blah, blah. I'm like, what was in that candidate list? They're like, oh yeah, birth dates. So I'm like, oh God. So I'm like, yeah, you probably don't want to do that. So I think that's sometimes you forget about that because you're like, it's a spreadsheet. Who cares? So being cognizant of that. And then the other mistake is too many unfinished agents. Like, I think that's the other part of this is everybody like AI, like automation has a defined start and a defined end. Like, I have a gap, I need to fill it. I'm going to write an automation. It's going to happen. AI, the world's your oyster. I could do this. I could do that. I could do this. I could do this. I mean, this stupid image on, what was it? The Blades of Glory or whatever. If you can dream it, you can do it. Like, it's dumb, but it's like, it's legit. Like, that is AI. Like, and so you start iterating all these things. Well, I wanted to do this. Now I wanted to do that. Now I wanted to do this. Oh, I talked to a client. I wanted to do this. Well, then it ends up becoming unfinished. And it's not even like you end up abandoning it for the next thing that you want to build. And so I see a lot of like, trying to figure it out and it's not working for you. You're just like, okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. Or I get frustrated. Yeah, I'm going to move on to the next one. And I think like really just understanding your end game. Like, what is that end game? And I said it before. If you can understand that and get yourself there, you will be ahead of the game, 100%.
All right, we have time for one more. Okay, this is a long one. Looking to modernize our business development using an AI tech stack. Apollo Clay, we use Create as CRM. Would you recommend something different for a month-to-month budget or a 3-month pilot? Do you have any others you suggest? You could also follow up with this one, this specific user post-event, Jeff, as well, needed.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely like respond. I mean, I think if it works for you, I mean, this is my thing because, you're going to need to have like, API integrations, especially if you're going with like Apollo. The one example I had, it was Apollo to Bullhorn, I think it was. But that's not to say that it can't happen to Apollo to Crelate. A lot of it is just, okay, what are you trying to modernize? What are you trying to get out of this? Is this business development strategies? Is this like a dashboard? Is this I want to be just more informed. Like, a lot of it is just understanding the outcomes, like where you think the outcomes are going to be, and then figure out, will those platforms support what you're doing? Because that's the other thing is like, some of them, they don't have an API connect, or the other part too is the token cost. That can tend to really, you'll see that a lot with like why people move to local servers is of the token costs in there. So I like Apollo. Like, if you're looking at like a list, I think Apollo is affordable. I think it has good information. I think it's easily API'd, and I've seen it where you can pull a lot of good information out of it. It just depends on how you're going to use it with Crelate. And what exactly, is that going to be your cold email outreach platform? Is that going to be just it giving you information and kind of appending your data? Like I said, I can reach out separately on that and have that conversation, but it really depends on a couple of different things. But I'm happy to reach out because that's kind of cool. Like, I like that stuff and I've seen it built and it's pretty sweet.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're just about at time. So thank you, everybody. And Jeff, thank you for your expertise in
Thank
this
you
wonderful
guys.
webinar. All
Yep,
right.
it's been great, guys.
Take care, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye.